For generations, many of us learned the story of the British Empire as if it were a story about British courage, British ships, British discipline, and British progress. But if you come from India, Bangladesh, Nigeria, Kenya, Jamaica, Malaysia, Ghana, Sri Lanka, the Caribbean, or any of the many countries once ruled by Britain, the story begins somewhere else. It begins with a trader arriving at a port, with a treaty signed under pressure, with a local ruler promised protection, with a tax that suddenly feeds an army far away, with a soldier from one colonized country sent to fight another, with a railway that carries both people and troops, with a law that turns a living community into a permanent category. The British Empire did not become powerful because British people were naturally more intelligent than everyone else. It became powerful because Britain built a system that could turn trade into influence, influence into political control, and political control into an empire. That is the real story behind the phrase, the empire on which the sun never sets. It was not only a story of conquest, it was a story of how power entered our societies, used our divisions, recruited our people, collected our wealth, and then presented domination as order. The first step was often business. The East India Company began as a trading corporation, but it was not an ordinary company. It could build forts, maintain armies, negotiate with rulers, and fight wars. A trading post could become a fortress. A fortress could become a political office. A political office could become a tax collection center. And once a company controlled revenue, it could pay for more soldiers and more wars. This was the first great transformation. A company began to behave like a state before it formally became one. Bengal shows this transformation with painful clarity. In 1757, the Battle of Plassey is often reduced to one dramatic sentence. Mir Jafar betrayed Nawab Siraj ud Daulah and the British won. But history is rarely that simple. The East India Company did not win because one person acted alone. It found a crisis inside the ruling system. It connected with political rivals, military commanders, financiers, merchants, and people who believed they would gain from a change of power. Mir Jafar became central to the story, but he was part of a wider coalition. Figures such as Rai Durlab and the banking house of Jagat Seth also belonged to the political and financial world surrounding the crisis. The company brought armed force, but it also brought promises, intelligence, negotiation, money, and a plan for what would happen after the battle. Plassey did not instantly give Britain the whole of South Asia. It gave the company something even more valuable, leverage over Bengal, one of the richest regions in the world. Bengal's revenues could now help finance the next war, and the next one after that. A local political crisis had become an imperial financial engine. This is why the history of colonization cannot be told only through battlefields. We also have to ask who financed the army, who collected the taxes, who supplied the information, who opened the gates, and who expected a reward after the foreign power won. Britain also learned to present control as protection. A ruler was not always told, "We are taking away your independence." He was told, "We will protect you from your enemies." Through treaties, protectorates, British residents, and systems such as the Subsidiary Alliance, many rulers kept their titles while losing control over their armies, foreign policy, and finances. The arrangement sounded safe. A British force would defend the state, but the ruler had to pay for that force. If the payment failed, territory could be taken. If the ruler negotiated with another power, Britain could intervene. Slowly, protection became dependence. The palace remained, the crown remained, the ceremonies remained. But the most important decisions moved into the hands of the protector. That was one of the most effective psychological tools of empire. Make the loss of sovereignty look like security. Another tool was the management of difference. Britain did not invent every conflict among the people it ruled. India already had political, religious, regional, social, and economic rivalries. Africa already contained many kingdoms, chiefdoms, communities, and political systems. The Caribbean already had class, race, and plantation divisions shaped by slavery and European conquest. But colonial governments studied these differences, classified them, ranked them, and used them. A community could be labeled loyal or rebellious. A people could be described as martial, backward, criminal, civilized, or suitable for administration. These labels did not stay inside official reports. They influenced recruitment, policing, taxation, land rights, education, and political representation. Difference became administration. Administration became power. In Africa, Britain often used indirect rule. Instead of replacing every local authority with British officials, colonial administrators governed through chiefs, emirs, councils, and other local institutions. British officials could remain in the background while local authorities collected taxes, enforced regulations, and carried colonial orders into villages. Sometimes this meant using existing political structures. Sometimes it meant reshaping them. In places where authority was decentralized, colonial officials could appoint or create chiefs who fitted the needs of the administration. So the important question is not only who was the British governor, the question is also which local authority was strengthened, which was weakened, and who was forced to carry out colonial orders. The same logic appeared in different forms across the empire. In Malaya, British influence expanded through treaties with sultans and the resident system. Local rulers remained visible, but British advisors increasingly shaped policy, finance, and resources. In the Caribbean, plantation wealth, slavery, colonial assemblies, merchants, naval power, and settler elites created a different kind of imperial structure. This was not the same story as Bengal or Nigeria, but it was still built on the control of land, labor, trade, and political authority. In many parts of the empire, Britain also relied on the people it ruled to maintain the empire. Indian sepoys became one of the most important military forces of British expansion. Across Africa and Asia, colonial governments recruited soldiers, police, guides, porters, clerks, and laborers from local populations. This created a terrible contradiction. Colonized people were sometimes used to conquer other colonized people. Military service could offer wages, status, protection, or a path into the colonial system. But local soldiers were never simply machines. They had their own loyalties, beliefs, grievances, and limits. The rebellion of 1857 showed that an army built to defend empire could also turn against it. Then came the quieter weapons: money, law, information, and infrastructure. Taxes paid for army. Land records made villages easier to control. Courts gave imperial decisions the appearance of law. Censuses and surveys made millions of people legible to the state. Maps turned living landscapes into administrative property. Railways carried goods out of colonies, but they also carried soldiers. Telegraphs connected distant officials to the colonial center. Ports moved raw materials across oceans. Schools produced clerks, interpreters, and administrators who made the system function. These institutions were not simply good or bad in isolation. Railways later helped national movements connect. Schools later produced anti-colonial leaders. Print networks later spread resistance. The tools built for empire could eventually be turned against empire. That is the central paradox. Britain's power was never one weapon. Trade opened the door. Diplomacy created dependence. Local alliances weakened resistance. Finance paid for armies. Law gave force an official language. Information made societies easier to manage. Infrastructure moved troops, goods, and instructions. And when negotiation failed, violence remained behind every agreement. But the empire was never controlled by Britain alone. It depended on local choices, local institutions, local soldiers, local elites, and local labor. That does not make colonized people responsible for colonialism. It shows how imperial power worked through pressure, opportunity, coercion, survival, resistance, and unequal bargains. For people across the Commonwealth, this is not only British history, it is our history. It is the history of why borders look the way they do, why some communities received privileges while others were punished, why some rulers kept their titles but lost their power, why certain languages entered schools and courts, why railways, laws, armies, and bureaucracies still shape our countries today. The empire where the sun never set was not built by British courage alone. It was built by a system that entered through commerce, negotiated through diplomacy, ruled through selected local authorities, extracted wealth through taxation, and maintained control through law, information, infrastructure, and force. And that is why the most important question is not simply, how did Britain conquer the world? The deeper question is, how did Britain persuade, pressure, recruit, divide, classify, and govern so many people? And how did those same people eventually turn the empire's own networks against it? If your country was once ruled by Britain, which part of the system shaped your history most deep? The treaty, the tax, the army, the law, the railway, or the politics of division. Because the story of the British Empire is not only the story of the power that arrived, it is also the story of the people who endured it, negotiated with it, resisted it, and finally outlived it.